All right, we're going to go through the legislative process, which is basically like the most important part of your role, because without legislation, we're not really doing anything. The overview for this is that we're going to talk about the purpose, who can author legislation, the letter and number assignments for legislation, the timeline of like when it's introduced, when it gets voted on, and then what happens if it passes or doesn't pass. And then we're going to do an activity practice writing legislation so that everyone can kind of familiarize themselves with it and then be ready to present maybe something in the fall. The purpose of, I want to say the main three purposes of the legislation here in ASOCU would be regulation, recommendation, and proposition. So like this year we had Facebook minutes, which is basically like, for me, someone telling me in the legislative branch, hey, maybe you should be posting Facebook minutes on our Facebook page to increase transparency. So that's something that's like regulatory. It's something that is telling someone to do something. And then recommendation. So we talked about student fees earlier. All of our student fees are a recommendation. I don't want to call it authoritative, but in a sense kind of is, but not really. And then proposition, so like library hours, we also talked about that. And there was a piece of legislation that said, hey, we want administration to review library hours. And so that's kind of like purposes of legislation. Who can author it? Representatives, senators, students. I'm not sure about any person on campus can they? I'm sure they can. And then the executive branch. And if something is to be presented in your respective house, so like Senate or House, it has to be sponsored by a representative or a senator. So if a student wants to write something about tuition, it has to be sponsored by a senator in order for it to be presented in Senate. So that's just something to keep in mind. Designations. So I think earlier we may have talked about like a JB 0913 or what that means. So like these are what, and I'll provide this presentation for you all so that you can reference it throughout the year. Sorry, I should have prefaced with that. So like joint is J, Senate. So, and then it also is followed by a number. The number following the dash represents the session of Congress. So right now, currently we're in the 9th session of Congress, so everything follows with the 09. And then the number after just kind of is like the order in which the legislation was presented. Go. So this is like a resolution. This is kind of like, we have your title, your designation, and then like your whereas statements, which is like the justification for the legislation. Like, here are the reasons why. And then resolve, here's the action maybe that we would like to take. And then the people that it's sent to, and then it has to get a signature. And like, it shows like the authors and the sponsors. So we kind of expect that when you are presenting it. Also for bills, the enacted part is kind of, this is what we're going to do as part of the justification. So it's a little different from the resolution.
Quick question over here.
Yeah.
What is something you can do to prepare for writing a piece of legislation?
Oh, sorry. Oh, gosh. I don't know what's going on. Okay. Sorry.
You can answer that and I'll fix this.
Okay, cool. So things to prepare for legislation. Talk to the people or organizations that maybe you want to write about. So like library hours, we have a library task force that's kind of working on that. So if you're wanting to write something about it, maybe talk to those members of that task force and maybe see what are some issues that they're having or want to fix. That's mostly encouraged so that when you bring it to the body, we can have maybe representatives from those areas come and speak and talk about their reasonings or their side of things or their processes, so we can get a fuller understanding of how the legislation will impact the people. Is there...
Talk to the department.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
if you're writing a resolution about the library, go talk to the library. You know, we're looking right now on library hours.
Right.
Go talk to the library. Why did they close hours? What's the budget implication?
Right.
If we wanted to open in 4 additional hours every week, what does that mean in terms of staffing? Electricity. What is that going to translate to a per student cost? Can they find savings other places? Those are questions they may be able to answer. Those questions they may not be able to answer. We may have creative solutions.
Yeah.
But yeah, talk to that audience, whoever that audience is.
And I would highly encourage doing that for like all legislation, because it seems to be, if you don't do that, when it comes to like your house, it's kind of like weird and confusing, and people are like, well, what about this? And we don't really have answers. So like really come prepared with all the information that is needed, because not everyone will know what you're necessarily talking about. So the timeline. So we have, when we present our legislation for the first time that a body hears it, it's considered a first reading. First readings are generally just to hear what's going on and maybe like a small discussion about, okay, are we going to prepare for amendments? And then we give you a whole week to discuss with maybe the affected parties or like students, each other, about how you could either make the legislation better or just your general thoughts about it. Then we go to a second reading, and second reading gives you an opportunity to discuss further maybe the changes that you'd like to make, and it's also the opportunity to amend the legislation. And then after amendments are made and everyone can come to a consensus of what amendment is right and what's not, we vote, which is, I guess I'll go back actually. So voting, when you vote, you only get one vote. You don't get like, you missed a meeting and then you send me your vote. That's not how it works. You also, I think we touched on this earlier, for joint session, either you vote or you don't. You can't send a proxy to vote for you. Proxies are allowed to vote for you in your regular meetings, your weekly meetings, but when it's joint, that's not allowed. Yeah.
A representative is allowed to abstain from voting?
Yes. So if you do bring a proxy, and this also goes for proxies as well, like if they come, they can abstain because they probably don't know what we're necessarily talking about, and that's totally okay.
I want to add a little bit to the abstention piece. This year we didn't talk about it too much, and so we're actually seeing a very big increase in the number of abstentions through House and Senate voting this year. The idea of an abstention really is either I absolutely don't have enough information to make this decision, and if that's the case, you should be telling your fellow representatives or senators, I need more information to make this decision. Don't sit silent, and then when it comes to voting, just say, I'm abstaining. If you're going to do it on those grounds, you should be communicating with your collective body to say, we need more info. The other reason to abstain would be you have a conflict of interest. Say you're voting on ASOSU is going to provide funding to this project, and you are going to directly benefit from that project and that funding because you're involved with it, and if the project gets funding, you're going to have a job from that funding, then you have a financial gain to be had, so it would be a conflict of interest for you to vote in it. That would be a good time to abstain. Otherwise, your peers voted you into these positions to make decisions on their behalf. So you should be learning all you can, engaging in discussion as much as you can. If you don't have enough information, telling the authors and the sponsors of that legislation you need more information. But then when it comes time to vote, hopefully you're in a better place to say, yes, I support this, or no, I don't. This year we are seeing a lot of people just abstaining because they're just sitting back and they're not engaging in conversation and they don't know what is even in front of them. Really, that's a disservice to your peers. They've elected you to make some really hard decisions. And those decisions sometimes are really hard. Do I fund this thing over here more than this thing over here? Those can be difficult. But that's the thing you signed up for. So how do we do that? By getting the information we need.
Yeah.
Another thing with abstaining is it counts towards the majority.
Yes, it does count towards the majority.
So there's been instances where representatives didn't truly understand that, and they didn't want something to pass, so they chose to abstain, but then all of their abstains counted towards the majority, so if something passed that they didn't actually want to pass. That's why it's really important to only utilize that when you need to.
Yeah, and I want to say, as far as information goes, we've had a few instances this year where resolutions and bills will be tabled, maybe because we don't have enough information fully collected yet to really make a decision on the legislation. So I do want to say that's also a part of the process. Doesn't happen as much, but you can table things when they are presented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Who, Sarah Sethimal? Thank you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. And then what's next? So if a bill or resolution is passed, it's expected that it's supposed to be sent to the president within 3 days, and then it has to get signed after it's received by the president within 7 days, and then it's good to go. If it doesn't happen, it just comes into effect in 7 days, but that is usually like what occurs. Conference committee, so this is a little different. So if we have like a joint resolution that's presented in House 1 week, and maybe it didn't get presented in Senate, House is ahead as far as the 2 weeks that we have to present legislation, and so they can make amendments and then pass their version. And so Senate, maybe if they don't accept those amendments, they'll pass their own version, and then it has to go to conference committee. And in conference committee, that is when they can come to a consensus, and then they'll reintroduce it to Congress. So that is something that can happen. And then if it fails, I'm sorry. Like, you tried. But yeah, so is there any questions as far as that process goes? Yes.
Sorry, one more. Do people's votes get recorded?
Yes, I record all the votes in every meeting, and then I will just like distribute that all to you the following week as well. But if you're asking for it in the meantime, I can totally provide that for you. Yes.
When do pieces of legislation go into effect, or does that just depend?
So I want to say after it's signed by the president, within that after or the 7 days, then it's into
outlined
effect.
specifically in the legislation.
Yeah, like immediately.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, and also something I want to throw it out there also, the president is also allowed to veto any legislation that comes through us, so I'm not saying that I'm going to veto stuff, but I just want to put that out there that if for some reason a piece of legislation reaches the president's desk and they feel that it's actually not beneficial for students, they're allowed to veto it. If that's the case, it goes back to both chambers of Congress, and you need a supermajority in order to pass it. It has happened. I mean, it's usually a rarity. Most of the time the president does agree and think it's a great idea, but there have been instances where it's they felt that after they had gathered more information, then it wouldn't have been appropriate for that to pass. And lots of the times, vetoes have been overturned, but much of the time, then once that information is released, people feel more comfortable. So just something to keep in mind.
Yes.
If I want a piece of legislation to be introduced, who should I send it to? If I want
Send it to me! So I talked about this in the beginning in introduction. So when you write legislation, I will provide you with templates and this, so kind of refer back to, but you have to send it to me first before it's introduced. If you don't, it won't be introduced the week that you maybe want it. The reason for that is because I keep track of everything, all the amended versions, everything to be archived at the end of the year. So just send it to me, I'll review it, make sure it's good to go. So I'm your peer editor for legislation. Is there anything else before we go into the activity? Yes.
Can we talk about the difference between resolution and bill a little bit more?
Okay, so a resolution, I did put this in my notes, but a resolution is kind of our stance on things. So I guess I'll just keep using the library hours example, but that's saying, hey, we think this service is really great. We want someone to evaluate it, or this is our opinion of saying we need more, or we need something to kind of check what's going on. And that's saying collectively as ASOSU, we believe that this is an issue that should be evaluated. A bill, kind of by definition of our Constitution, is it's a binding act of Congress. So if someone if it's a statute change, if something violates that, it's considered, you can consider someone for impeachment or something like that. So there's there's a difference. Did you understand?
Yeah, I guess if you were to try to pass a bill to change something within the university as a whole, and ASOSU passes that, does the university have to do that bill?
So I'm going to say that our bills are for ASOSU specifically. Resolutions would be something that we're asking of the university, because we can't really tell the university what to do, but we can say, hey, we think you need to fix yourself. So
a simple way of putting it is a bill is an internal change within ASOSU, and a resolution is a recommendation of a change within the university.
resolutions too can also, hi, my name's Luke, I'm the Judicial Council Chair, sorry I came in late. Resolutions too can also be about like major issues sometimes going on in the US. I think
Right.
an example is sometimes they did
We did DACA. We did the DACA
right. It's the
resolution.
students of ASOSU who resolved that, and then you say your opinion around perhaps a major issue, and then that is the student government of OSU. This is what they stand by within that. It may not have technically any effect on something, but it is presenting your voice as to these are what the students of OSU think on this issue as well. So you can utilize it in that way too.
And even though we can't demand that change to other like departments and things along those lines, or to politics as a whole, it does carry a lot of weight when ASOSU puts a stamp on something and says we stand for this or we want to see this change. An example is like our faculty senate. There's been a lot of stuff where they wanted our support, and that was really important to them. Where we brought something forth, and they were like, "Wow, ASOSU is behind this, so we should really take this into consideration." So I think resolutions can be really powerful, and it should be taken seriously as far as whether you support something or not.